Welcome or welcome back to On This Date. On This Date is a channel where I discuss past and present murders, disappearances, or anything true crime related. And today I just want to hop on here and discuss the Karen Reed trial, the retrial, week two. So I did a video week one of kind of my thoughts and my overview of where I thought the jury would kind of be leaning at this point, or how I thought Karen's defense was doing, different points that I thought were important during the trial that I picked up on. And again, if you guys want to leave in the comments down below what you felt was important during the trial or things that really stuck out to you. Also, um, do you believe Karen's guilty? Do you believe she's guilty of intentionally harming John? Or do you think that this was a tragic accident and she's guilty for that? Leave in the comments below what your thoughts are. So I'm obviously going to say, if you haven't watched any of the other videos, and if you have, you know that I lead more towards she's not guilty of anything and that this is a cover up and she's being framed. Um, I don't know. To me, I just can't see it. So that's why I say in the comments, leave what you guys feel. And maybe I'm not seeing something that maybe you guys think is important. And it'll be interesting with the jury as well, because that's how it goes with them. I mean, they're even going off of not knowing, much about the previous trial. So they're not allowed to have researched or research or do anything. So they're coming in there not knowing anything either. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. So with that, like last week, I just like take notes in my phone for this case. And I mean, I do it for many of cases that I cover. I just usually don't read off the notes. I take the notes and kind of put it into a form where it's easier to explain or simplified more than me just kind of like rambling off. Um, Always trying to tell it to you so you can better understand it, just coming from a normal person telling a story about um, a crime that's occurred. So okay, so on my notes, I felt it was important for, I guess, these things, because this is kind of what I talk into the phone and say while I'm listening. So we had Ian Whiffen, and he's for the Commonwealth. He's the Celebrate expert. And at first, Ian had me kind of convinced of otherwise, right? But that's why it's always important to wait till the cross examination, because hearing him talk, over these past days could make you think, well, maybe John didn't make it into the house, right? Or different things with the temperature of the phones and such things like that. So I found it interesting that John O'Keefe's the Apple Health data kind of shows him going up and down stairs, which, if you're familiar with the last trial, you know that it was kind of suspected something may have taken place down in the basement, and that's why Brian Alberts replaced the flooring. They also got rid of the home, got rid of the dog, got rid of their phones. I mean, the shadiness and the cover up seems, in my opinion, to be going on. So that I thought was important, because, like, could he have been going down the stairs, like he's going up the stairs into the house, or however the house is laid out, and then going down the stairs? I don't know. I thought that was kind of, I'd like to hear more on that. Also, we had some talk about the distance from the flagpole to the front door, and to hear Ian Whiffen talk about it, you would think that, again, there was no way John entered that home. However, on cross-examination, Karen's defense team kind of, well, they do point out that, yes, he could have not entered the home, but you're not saying with these, it was, I believe, 36 steps in a distance could have meant he entered the home. The way that they kind of calculated this circular radius around how far John traveled, they didn't play too much when the Commonwealth had him on the stand to the fact that there was room for John to have entered the house. So on cross-examination, Ian is then kind of forced to have to state that yes, there could have been, he could have entered the home, right? And so kind of in his testimony previous to this, you would not hear much of that discussion. It was kind of much, no, his phone stopped and he didn't enter the home, but went on cross, that kind of falls apart. Also, I thought this was very important, the temperature in Canton that night. So when Ian performed these tests on the cell phones, on John's cell phone specifically, he tested because remember, the battery and the health of the phone was reading that the temperature was dropping, that the battery started out at, I believe, something like 70 degrees and then dropped to 60 to 50 and so on and so forth. However, in asking all these questions and them talking about the testing, Ian states that he puts this cell phone into a freezer. And that's how he determines the coldness or the temperature drop with this phone. And it's pointed out in cross-examination about not knowing the weather in Canton that night. And I always thought that was kind of odd too. If you were going to test a phone and you were going to try to recreate a crime scene, would you not test it to the exact conditions of that night? I know they do that in other cases. I mean, they do it in crash testing where this is something separate, but they recreate the scene to then go and determine like a final analysis of what happened. Who's at fault? Is it the car? Is it the person? Is it, so on and so forth. So I thought it was strange too from the beginning that he was just placing the phone into the freezer without knowing the temperature in Canton that night, which to me would be a significant thing to want to know and to want to test to see. I mean, he went as far as testing the, was it the incline because of people were thinking up and down the stairs, I believe, with the Apple Health, where he was testing to see that in a vehicle, all kinds of different tests, but you never thought to see actually what the temperature was in Canton that night. I thought that was interesting. And I thought that was a very good, I mean, obvious but good observation on the defense's part to call him out about that, because that does put a lot of question on his reading of that temperature. And remember, the temperature is important because if the temperature changed, that was indicating that Karen Read, to the prosecution, right? Their temperature theory was that Karen Read had to have hit him. He laid on the phone and his phone continually dropped. It never went up, and it it didn't adhere or cohere, I guess, to it being in the home where it would be a different temperature, a warmer temperature than the weather there. So that is a one of the bigger issues, but again, to me, it's very hard, and this is just my opinion and someone who is obviously not um, an expert in any kind of phone data or Apple Health or anything like that. However, I feel like, and this has happened to like me and my son who had the same model of phone, right? And if we're testing the same model, my point is that you're having a duplicate recreated phone or whatever, like some of these tests he would do. To me, I think it would just be better to like stick with the actual phone that was involved in things, because like for instance, me and my son and I both had a iPhone SE. My phone would constantly die. It would constantly do this, and it was the same exact phone. However, mine, probably because I wasn't the best about leaving it on the charger overnight or doing whatever I was doing, um, I affected, like, I guess you could say, like, the health of the phone. If I'm looking at it like, did I not take good care of it? And is that why it was doing that? As opposed to my son, who it wouldn't die at all. It didn't get hot. It didn't do all kinds of things, but it was the same phone. So I don't know. I can't remember for sure. I guess I probably should have kind of looked into that. but I'm just kind of taking or telling you the notes I have. Was it actually John O'Keefe's phone, his actual cell phone that he tested for that temperature check? Because I know it's some of the extraction or some of the ways he says that the iOS operating system works the same through various models like 13, 14, 15, or something to that extent. So was the actual temperature again, was that gauged on John's personal phone? I don't know. Or was that a recreation? Which I almost think that he used a similar phone to John's to put in the freezer and do those tests. So correct me again down in the comments if I'm wrong or you know a little bit more about that, that you can kind of touch further on, I guess, or correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so I had about the temperature, and then I had, Ian stating he went into detail, just kind of looks different coming from the perspective of the cross examination as to what I was seeing with the prosecution testimony. To me, I put here, I think Leslie pretty much shredding the testimony to pieces at this point and putting or poking holes a lot in the accuracy of the test. So I think that was good. I think it was a good moment for the defense and a valid, important piece of the puzzle in helping determine if John made it in that home or not. So I think it's very important to scrutinize that piece of evidence, especially when you have an expert coming forward and testifying in front of grand juries and now testifying again in her retrial. That is what it states. So again, I think that that's important. So okay, so now we're going to be on the Jen McCabe testimony, and this starts with the Commonwealth questioning her, and they paint Jen McCabe out. And again, this is in my opinion, my feelings, how I am interpreting things, people, attitudes, behavior. I could be completely wrong. So again, this is just how I interpret it. And feel freely again to comment down below what you think of Jen McCabe or Carrie Roberts or any of the people actually associated with this case that played a major role in this. So Jen McCabe testimony, we start out with the prosecution painting her out to be a upstanding citizen. She could very much well be. Good mom, very involved, sports, very involved in the community. They ask her, how does she know Karen Read, where she then kind of lets them know she knows Karen Read from dating John. And then she developed I'm going to put air quotes around friendship, because I don't think any one of these women are friends with Karen Read. I mean, look what's going on right now. I don't know. Do friends just do this to each other? And again, this is coming from the perspective of, I think this is being set up. So again, your opinion could be totally different. My opinion is these women were never her friends, and I stated in my last video. I think they were intimidated by Karen, and I think they were like fake friends with her. I think they felt that she didn't belong in their little clique, and not for financial or really anything, because Karen is a very well-established woman. I think because she was a little outspoken, and they didn't like that. They were intimidated by Karen. So I think when John started bringing her around, they were kind of like, oh man, we might have to cool off with our bad behavior, in my opinion. So Jen states that they became friends because of a multiple sclerosis diagnosis. And take away that how I feel about Jen's behavior. And it hasn't been proven that there's things that have been proven that are lies, obviously, or things we believe. But the retrial is not over yet. And regardless, she's dealing with a health condition that is absolutely horrible, and so is Karen Read. So I definitely want to take a minute and say that, the health condition is horrible, and I'm not playing that into what just my opinion of Jen is. I'm just going off of looking at Jen as a person, taking the diagnosis out of it, also being sympathetic to the fact that this woman is dealing with a lot, and also sympathetic to the point or to the fact that women's if we're completely wrong here. And I don't really feel that way. However, we're all human and we make mistakes and we can be wrong. Um, Jen, if we look at this like Karen was guilty of this, Jen now has went through a lot of scrutiny through the media, and Jen also lost a very important person in her life, which I really do think John O'Keefe was an important person in her life. Um, the behaviors afterward with everything, I don't know. But as far as I want to make sure my mic was on because yesterday I recorded this whole video and my mic wasn't on. So I want to make sure that it's on this time. Sorry. So again, like Jen could be just as much of a victim in this too, and also dealing with a lot of health conditions and trying to grieve the loss of somebody who she was close with, and Jen being close to his niece and nephew as well. So I just want to say that I'm not this cold-hearted person, but I do lean more towards this was a cover up, but I also can recognize that myself, other people, we could be wrong, because we don't know, and Karen hasn't been, we're not finished yet. We don't know. So I just wanted to put that out there and say that if, it turns out that Karen is guilty, um, beyond a reasonable doubt, then I think that we should have some more compassion to Jen and to everybody that would be a victim if this was truly Karen's doings of this that night, because they've also been rung through the ringer, ring through the ringer. What's the right term for that? But I don't know. To me, I'm pretty sure that if there wasn't a cover up, it just doesn't make sense that there couldn't have been. I mean, like you could say, well, maybe there was different things going on, or maybe they did forget and now they remember. I don't know. There's too much deleting things. There's too much getting rid of things. There's too much Michael Proctor. I mean, just Michael Proctor alone should make us all take a step back and be like, for sure something went on. That's why I'm saying, again, I could be wrong, but to me, there's a lot more proving that Karen Read is innocent of this and is being framed. So sorry, went off there, but I just want to make it clear, like, it's hard. It's dealing with somebody who's passed, and it's a hard situation. And again, we have John, who's the actual victim, and it kind of gets overshadowed with all this craziness going on, and it's sad. At the end of the day, a niece and a nephew, they don't have their uncle, their father figure. Peggy has lost again, after suffering the loss of her daughter, her son-in-law, John. I mean, it's horrible, the whole situation. So take a breather there and back to my notes. So I guess I put an hour 122. I must have just been talking in a thing. I think that I brought this up because kind of going back to Jen McCabe being Karen's friend, or Carrie Roberts being Karen's friend, I thought it was interesting to find out the kind of the conversation. And if this was in the first trial, I don't, it didn't stick out to me then, it does now. Like I know they were calling her crazy, but I didn't remember this part where Jen, Carrie, and Karen are in the car looking for John's body, or I'm sorry, looking for John, and then they discover his body. But they're in the car, and Carrie Roberts, I'm sorry, my son has his PlayStation app downloaded on here, and it keeps making that noise. I just muted the sound. I just noticed. I'm like, what is that noise? So we have Jen, Carrie, and Karen in the car, and Karen is frantic, screaming, looking for John. It's chaos in the car. And Carrie Roberts, I believe stated this, was saying, could he been at his ex's in front of Karen? And I thought that was like such a like a bitchy, offhanded, like, why and what did that pertain to anything? Like, and even if you thought that, or if you knew something was going on, which there hasn't been any proof of this, why would you just not say to Jen in the car or text her and be like, hey, don't say that, like, don't say that to Karen. But why not text the other woman in the car and say, hey, do you think John could be at such and such's house? And he was there like last week. I'm just saying that could be the scenario, right? And then the other woman kind of be like, okay, when we get a chance, I'll call over or I'll text John or all this. Like, it was just such a unnecessary comment. And I just thought like a bitchy one. And I also didn't like that um, Jen kind of brings this up in like the way she says it. And even the way that they are describing Karen's behavior. Again, I don't like it. To me, it's just like very catty and just kind of further, in my mind, proves kind of the situation going around prior to this death of John. During Jen McCabe's testimony, I have here that I noticed that she started off way more friendly, way more approachable, way more willing to answer. But shortly, I see that that has kind of her past behavior at the other trial, the first trial, has kind of peeked through here and there. And I find it interesting that Jen has gotten quite snippy and kind of asking a question with the question, or can you rephrase that? And also, there was a part in this, it's going to probably be in my notes, but it just kind of hit me when talking about the word she was using, the word nefarious. And this was one of the great moments, I think, of the courtroom where Alan, and I believe it was Alan Jackson, was questioning her and saying, you never told about talking to your sister that morning. Um, Basically, this stems from a conversation that, or an instance. So Jen McCabe was coming to be interviewed by the FBI. And she told the FBI that she needed a little bit of time to get ready for this interview. But in the meantime of that, she was making phone calls. And she made a phone call to her sister. And for some reason, she can't remember this and she testifies to this. And so Alan Jackson is trying to question her about this. And he's really hammering like into her about why did you forget that call out of others? Or first of all, I don't think she told about the phone calls. Then she fessed up. Then she didn't talk about the sister. Again, just weird things going on. And so after getting grilled about this and grilled about this, she's getting mad. And so she kind of snaps back and she says, well, you're making it sound nefarious when it's not. And I believe it was Alan Jackson or not Alessi, but I think Alan Jackson. And he says, nefarious? You use the word nefarious? Why would you use the word nefarious? Miss McCabe, and just like constantly kind of like, why would you use that? She's like, well, you're taking it out of making it sound nefarious. Like, I'm not making it sound nefarious. Do you understand what the definition of nefarious is? And just, I don't know. I thought it was one of the more like kind of heated exchanges because Jen has been more on a better behavior. So she didn't like that she used the word nefarious and he wasn't gonna let her because trying to make it look a certain way to the jury, right? So he wasn't going to let that happen. I think that I wrote in my notes that Karen, when Jen even came in on, was it Friday morning, Friday testimony, I wrote that Karen gave Jen this look. I caught it. I happen to listen. I listen to the trial a lot. I listen while I'm like getting ready or I'm doing other things, and I'll leave my notes tab open. So if I hear anything, I can just say into the phone. I happen to be looking down. At times I'll look to see different things, right? But I happen to be looking down when Jen McCabe had entered the courtroom, and the look Karen Read gave her, I was like, oh man, Karen Read, you could tell it was if eyes could kill, yeah, she gave her a death stare. Rightfully so. Again, Karen Read feels like she's being railroaded by Boston here, and or the Canton Police Department, and then the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So you could sense the courtroom was tense, I'm sure, and you can just see, like, I remember watching part of the trial, and Karen Reed, I can't remember exactly, but I think it was Jen McCabe talking in her testimony, and she kind of like sat up and like did one of these, and it was like a blatant, like, let's hear what you have to say, because she believes it's lies. And she's even, I'll insert a couple clips, or if I don't throw them up on my shorts, of her coming out and speaking to the press. um Now, do I agree with it? I think it's coming off different to everybody, right? I would have stayed quieter. I would have let them wonder what I was thinking. However, Karen is choosing to voice her, or have her voice. And you know what? In a way, if she didn't have her voice and she didn't speak up and she didn't get out there in front of the press and call police out right in front of, or I can't remember who she called out right in front of that press conference, um, she probably would be sitting in a jail cell right now. So I get why she wants to speak when they ask her, and that's her right. And so, again, I am in support of whatever she feels is a good way to get her message out, and that's great. Me personally, I can be, would be the word objective, or I I could see where it's not making her look great. Um, to some people, where they could be taking her kind of like she's on a vendetta to take them down, which she is, but people could read that as very many different ways. So I think it's bold what she's doing. I think it's great that Alan Jackson stands right behind her and supports her and gives her a little smile when she's talking. And I don't know. Uh, yeah, I just kind of thought about that and figured I'd add that in there, and my thoughts on that. So again, I find it funny. I have in the notes here that it's always their memory. Like Jen McCabe now, she remembers this. I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, where she didn't remember that before. And she's questioned about why she didn't tell um, Trooper Proctor that at the time. She's questioned about a lot of things as to why she didn't remember it back when she gave her grand jury testimony, but all of a sudden, years later, now she remembers it. Um, Alan Jackson questions her about her interactions with Trooper Proctor and how she never told to Lieutenant Tooley how she had made multiple calls, and how this is referring to her not disclosing that she ever seen Michael Proctor in person for these interviews, and not really being upfront and honest with Lieutenant Tooley. Um, when questioned, I don't, she just always kind of beats around the bush, or she'll say, well, I wasn't asked this exact thing, or if it says that on the paper, then I guess, but I don't remember saying that, or no, that's not right. She's even at some points, I believe, said like what the writing was on the paper. That's not right what I said. I said, or I remember it. Well, then I remember it this way now. It's like, yeah, that's not how it works, but okay. Um, let me see here. Okay, so also, um, going back to the butt dials that night from Jen McCabe to John O'Keefe's phone, and she was saying that they were butt dials, that basically her phone called him, was it 7 times? There was 7 calls, and that each time she butt dialed it, but then kind of quickly threw um, that, Alan Jackson says to her, well, that can't be because you have to open your phone biometrically. So biometrics has to be used to open an iPhone. And he's saying that if you just butt dialed, because she's trying to kind of say, well, I must have had him open in text messages, so then it called, or maybe I hit the button and then it just called my last call. And he's like, okay, well, if that really did happen, then how come there's not long voicemails? Meaning that at some point you had to pick the phone up and hang the phone up. And again, she tries to skirt away from actually having to answer that question. And in this about 20-minute interaction through some of the previous things I talked about, um, good old Bev, the judge, the peach of a judge, she is starting to piss me off every time with the sustain. These are all like relevant questions, and it seems like the defense, she doesn't want nothing to be asked. And it's just funny to me because she seems very biased and she seems like she's really leaning on the Commonwealth side, in my opinion. I also think that she probably is leaning on the Commonwealth side. It just doesn't look good for law enforcement. It just doesn't look good for the area. It doesn't look good for numerous reasons. Even though she didn't investigate the case, she's the judge and she has a major role in it. So I think that she definitely backs the Commonwealth. And to me, she does show bias. But again, that's in my opinion. But she is quite the gem. So she's always sustaining him. So he, of course, has to go to sidebars, which the question, I think twice has already just got answered. It's just they're trying to get little things taken out. And it's like, these are important things that are relevant to the case. But I don't know. She seems not to really like the line of questioning that Alan Jackson's doing. So about the butt dialing and the infamous 227 search. It's like, Jen, again, she's questioned on this and she just keeps beating around and saying she's not a Celebrate expert. And she doesn't want to admit about this search at 227. She wants it so much to be at that 6 something mark when Karen supposedly told her to do it. That story gets further broken down, which I actually, this moment here was great. And I think that this was when I probably put down here in the notes, but going back on my memory, I actually think that this is when they take a sidebar because Alan Jackson asks Jen McCabe if she knows that Carrie Roberts, now in her previous grand jury testimony, has stated that she wasn't there, never heard Karen Read ask for the search. And remember, it was Jen saying her and Carrie heard the question about hypothermia and about searching the Haus Long because she misspelled it to die in the cold. So when Alan Jackson asks her, "Are you aware that Carrie Roberts actually now testifies that she never heard that?" I was waiting to see the reaction, and Jen McCabe said, "No. I bet you she could have died then because that was their whole story in this 227 timeline. This has been so highly scrutinized. This is a really important point because, again, if this was searched at 227, that means Karen Read absolutely did not hit John. And they don't want to back off of that 227 timeline. But Jen will try anything to get around this. Now, Carrie Roberts says that never happened. So now Jen pretty much says, well, no, she was sent away. And I'm telling you, I don't care what it says. That search was done at that time at 6. It was from Karen Read's direction or asking, please look this up. He points out that there's no video, there's no audio of any of this. Let's see, what else did I write about any of that testimony? Oh, also about at the time where Carrie Roberts kind of corroborated that Jen McCabe and her heard this how long to die in the cold search thing with Karen Read. And also going off of the Jen McCabe and Carrie Roberts testimony, he was saying to her, you and Carrie had an opportunity to get this timeline together. You sat down, you rehearsed your stories, and that's why at the first grand jury testimony, you both came with that story. But now that Carrie's story has fell apart, you're really the only one. So it's your word against Karen's then, correct? Which is hearsay. So yeah, that was pretty good. He called her out about that. And oh, a very important thing I thought that was asked at this part with Jen. Ellen Jackson asked her, which I guess trying to piece everything together, and they're really wondering why Brian Alberts never came out or Nicole Alberts. Um, I never really thought about, and I heard it and I was like, wow, that really stuck out to me this time, right? Jen McCabe, he makes a point in saying that what were you doing while John was laying on the ground? And did you know how to perform CPR? Did Karen? Did Carrie? Did anybody? And she admits no. And where he's leading to this is through a few questions is why, if John O'Keefe is laying in this yard and you need immediate help, like you said, and that's why she gave reasons for different things because she wasn't concerned with that. She was concerned with getting John O'Keefe immediate medical attention. She admits she does not know CPR, and who would be the fastest to get there besides 911? Well, that would be her cop brother-in-law, whose house that John is laying in their yard. I never really put that into perspective. Like, he's an officer. Why wouldn't have Jen not ran to his house, beating on his door, knowing he is trained in life-saving measures? Why would she have never did that? And Alan Jackson points out that not only did she not do that, she then called her sister. And seeing everything that was unfolding in front of her, she never thought that when she called her sister twice that she didn't answer, that she should go in and check on her sister, seeing that there's a dead man laying in their yard. You never thought to go bang the door down, get your sister and your brother-in-law up. No. So yeah, I thought that was actually a very, very interesting part of it. And it really does, like, her only excuse to this was that she was so frantic and just trying to get John as quick as help as getting John as quick of help as she could. There's literally basically a first responder, I mean, right there. I don't know. I thought that really stuck out to me then. And I don't know why it hasn't yet. I guess because I was so focused on like everything else, and Brian Alberts hiding in his house was kind of like just the given, like that was a strange enough situation alone. But trying to kind of dissect taking that part out, I guess I just kind of overlooked that part. And I thought that was a really valid point in this testimony this time. Um, with also that kind of questioning her about the scene, she then asks Jen if she heard what Karen says to one of the first responders coming, and nobody heard the I hit him, I hit him, I hit him. In this actual audio and video, you can hear Karen saying, she says, my boyfriend, I left him and he never came home. And she's screaming to the responder that's there because she's frantic, and she's like, this is my boyfriend. I left him. He never came home, and like trying to piece things together. And I thought that that was interesting that that's on camera, but not the I hit him, I hit him, I hit him, when according to other people too, she was just out there screaming all this stuff. Remember, it's could I have hit him? Did I, like, trying to piece things together, not I hit him, but whatever. I already touched on this CPR, and I also did put here about talking about Peggy for a second too, and just again kind of shining light on actually the family and John and Peggy and the victims, just everything going on. when Alan Jackson was questioning Jen McCabe about the interaction outside where it was kind of caught on police cam, dash cam, and he asks Jen like multiple questions. And he says, "Why did you turn your back to John's body getting put up on the gurney and wheeled past you?" And I just felt bad and sad for Peggy that she has to listen to this and then sit there and imagine this or see it played on a video. Um, I just felt really sad, and I guess sad enough that I really just put it down as something that I thought was important to talk about. This is horrible, and it's so horrible that his family and his mother, who's lost so much, has to sit through this, and it's really unfortunate. I don't know, and even if if Karen Reed gets found not guilty, is there going to be anybody that's ever held responsible for John O'Keefe's murder? I don't know. In my opinion, and I said it in the last one, what I think happened is John was a good cop and these were bad cops. John knew something. John confronted them that night and things spiraled out of control. In my opinion, that's what I think. I don't think he was jealous over the other officer hitting on Karen. I don't think any of that. And whether or not that ever gets brought to light and that's how things play out, yes, maybe she should get justice if that's the scenario. But again, I'm sure she's gonna have to go through another trial then. And then you have to accept that the people your son worked alongside, people of the community, people to serve the community, someone to keep your son safe, brothers in blue, right? Betrayed your son. I think that's even more hurtful. I think that emotions were really high. I'm not saying they're not this trial. I think emotions were really high in the beginning at the first trial, and I think Peggy wanted, and this is just what my feelings are, or what I kind of read, or what I would think, and I could be 100% wrong. Peggy still may stand in her conviction of what she stood on from day one, and that's her right, and she's that's her right. But I think in the beginning, her emotions were very raw, and I think that she couldn't see maybe what was really going on and was fed this narrative by people that she's believed for X amount of years. Her son has been in law enforcement, that always had his back or were good friends of the community, good friends of him, stepped in and helped with their niece and nephew. I think in the beginning, with so much loss and grieving, I think it would be hard to see that from people you trust, right? No one wants to believe that someone they trust with their kids, no matter how old their kids are going to endanger them, hurt them. They're there to protect the community and also their brotherhood, their fellow police officers. So I don't know. I wonder how Peggy. I mean, I want to say she stands probably where she stood in the beginning, but after seeing this whole trial, will her thoughts change? How does she reconcile the differences in testimonies or the inconsistencies or a lot of things that went on that don't look good for the police department? I just wonder how does she and her brain kind of reconcile how the lead investigator is now fired, and does she ever question them actually? And again, she doesn't have to. She can believe what she wants, and no one, not myself, is going to ever touch on she's dead wrong. And even if Karen's found, not guilty, I still wouldn't get on here and be like, see Peggy, because it's just not appropriate. She's dealing with a lot of loss, and you just have to feel for her at the end of the day. So I'm going to leave it there because I think that I pretty much touched on what I wanted to touch on. And again, I want to take a minute to remember John and, you know, send love support to John's family in any way that's available. Um, and yeah, at the end of this is all tragic for everyone involved. So let me know down in the comments what you guys think. And I will be watching again come Monday and trying to get everything pieced together and staying on. It's a lot of hours. It's 7 hours a day. So we had that little break last week, the day of recess, for like the holiday. The courtroom goes on, I believe. So yeah, it's getting interesting, and I'm looking forward to seeing the new testimonies of everybody else who mysteriously gained back their memory. So there's that. I hope you guys had a great weekend, and I am planning on covering the Sandra Birchmore, in my opinion, murder. And actually, Matthew Farwell is been charged, so that's where we're at with that. I am going to film a video with that. Also, again, linked with the Canton PD. It's like what goes on in Boston, what truly goes on. Massachusetts, I don't know. There's police corruption everywhere, but yeah, it's pretty bad there. So I'm going to be covering that and kind of shedding light there. Also, some case updates or trial updates, as Matthew Farwell now is set to face trial. I want to look back into the dates because I keep reading varying different information on that. So I want to make sure that I can kind of pinpoint exactly when, and so we can start following that trial as well, because I'm interested in seeing that. And to me, I think that's pretty much cut and dry, in my opinion. So again, hope you guys had a good weekend, and I will see you on my next video. Like, comment, and subscribe. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and also I have a second channel, Counting Steps with Courtney, and that's where I document my journey with my prosthetic leg. All right, guys, see you later.